Thank you for joining us. All right. Let me continue covering this system. And we're going to take your phone calls at 877-590-5525 on, A, what you think about what's unfolding and what you think we should do about it. And I've got my own ideas historically. But for those that just joined us, let me recap. There is a financial international order. This is mainline history for those that wish to read the history books that are given to the Foreign Service people and high-level CIA section chiefs and others, like Carroll Quigley, the head of Georgetown Political Science, Bill Clinton's mentor. Carroll Quigley in '68 wrote Tragedy and Hope, and in there he has all the quotes about how the private central banks of the world had a far-reaching plan to set up a world government and a one-world currency. You also need to know that the heads of the IMF, World Bank, Treasury Secretary Paulson are, quote, rabid environmentalists. He heads up a lot of the activities of Nature Conservancy, taking people's private property. They think humans are bad. They think we live too well. They want to take our wealth. They want easily managed, basically bankrupt third world slaves. And now they have engineered the crisis. They have been given immunity, unlimited power in Europe and the United States through the central banks to basically do whatever they want. The private central banks are taking over the government functions and being given government power. It is not a banker bailout. It is a banker takeover. And then what did we tell you years ago and then leading up to this in the last few months? We said when they get this, I said this 3 shows ago. I said this last week. I say it on every show now, every radio broadcast, every TV show I do. I have laid out the facts for everybody and said they are going to propose a world government, a new world order, run by the private banks that have already bankrupted all the governments and control them with just fiat currency they create out of nothing that they then claim the public owes. And not only are you going to have hyperinflation that devalues your savings and your paycheck and your fixed incomes particularly, my friends, but I've got several headlines up on prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com for mainstream news saying get ready for a huge tax bill. They are already with current U.S. debt. The Congressional Budget Office years ago projected that the American people by 2014 would be paying about 85% taxes as they do in France and many other areas of the world just for the interest on the debt. But it's a fraudulent debt. The banks just write it off, but then they sign it onto our backs and then inflate the currency. But it's so amazing to read Bloomberg Financial. ECB sees global tripolar currency system evolving. European Central Bank Council member Edwald Notui said a tripolar global currency system is developing between Asia, Europe, and the U.S. We always told you, be trilateral, meaning 3. The North American Union, the European Union, the Asian Union. And I go on radio shows. I go on TV shows. I was on international television yesterday for an hour on a show called Four Corners on Press TV. By the way, we just linked to that up on prisonplanet.com. After the show, you can go watch it if you'd like. And they had this big financial writer from Russia, a big financial writer from London on. And they would say, well, yes, the banks are taking over, but it's what they have to do. They didn't mean to cause this. And there's no such thing as a new world order, and there's no call for global currency. And I just fired out on the show 4 or 5 headlines yesterday on Saturday about this. Now, here's one from AFP, Agency French Press. It's a little 1-minute news clip. It's a video news clip that you just heard the start of there. Now, listen carefully. At the very end, they talk about a global currency. And I can play clip after clip of them calling for a new world order. In the words of the Prime Minister of England, Gordon Brown, a global system run by the banks with global management so these crises never happen again. So here it is.
Another whiff of panic hit Asian and European stock markets on Thursday, just as European leaders were meeting for a summit in Brussels. Their aim, show a unified front in efforts to reform the financial system, bringing it back under control.
What's been the recipe for our recent success? Our unity, coordination, the will to move forward. We can't give up faced with this crisis.
EU members have put pressure on the United States for an early meeting of the G8 with emerging countries. The French president and the EU Commission chief are to meet with the U.S. president this weekend to discuss the proposal.
Nicolas Sarkozy's initiative, which we backed from the beginning, this summit, the meeting on Saturday, and the consultation with all our partners would allow us to make great progress.
de faire des progrès très importants.
Europe wants to present a blueprint for a new worldwide currency system. Just as urgent are measures to fight an oncoming recession.
All right. Now, that's AFP. That's as big as Reuters and AP. So that's the European, basically, AP out of France. Now, I have clip after clip of this. I mean, if you just Google world leaders call for new world order banking system, you will read Financial Times of London, BBC, AP, Reuters. But it's still not on our nightly news, though, saying government for and by the private central banks, and that they will set currency values for all the nations of the world in 3 giant blocks. Now, here's another example. In my film Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement, that came out 14 months ago, that came out a little more than a year ago, I show a press conference with George Bush, the head of the European Union, Barroso, and the Chancellor of Germany, Merkel. And they say, we have the European Union, we have the North American Union, we're already merging them right now. And they go on to say by 2010 they'll be fully merged. Now, you go out and tell the public that, they laugh at you. They have press conferences in the Rose Garden outside with the president saying it. Now, in 2005, then head of Canada, Paul Harper, then President of Mexico, Vicente Fox, and then President Bush, still be president for another 3 or 4 months, met at Baylor up in north central Texas. And they said the agreement's secret, the public can't see it. Well, Judicial Watch and others sued and got a copy, and it said, we've got to keep this secret from the public. This is in Endgame, by the way. You go to Judicial Watch and read it. We've got to keep this secret. We're going to have a major currency crisis, security prosperity partnership. We'll use terrorism. We'll use the threat of global warming. We'll use the threat of financial collapse to get the public to accept this. I mean, it's even in the agreement how to lie to us. We have this bombshell smoking gun info. We warn the public what's going to happen. We tell you years before there's going to be a commodities crisis. There's going to be a derivatives crisis, starting with subprime mortgages. We go cover the Bilderberg Group meeting where all these banking heads meet once a year. 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, that was in Canada, in Ottawa. We go there. I even get arrested trying to cover it. And we come out and say, our sources inside tell us that they're going to pop the subprime mortgage within a year and a half and use that as the pretext to blame it on the public and bring in a new world order banking system. There'll be a trilateral world currency system. We lay out, it's in my film. It's in the extras. It's in all the interviews, the articles we wrote. Go back to those June articles, 2006. Read them. It's exactly what's happening. And the public was preconditioned to not be able to deal with this or face this years ago. Here's an example. I get on the air in 1995. People are calling into my local TV show saying, my cousin says black helicopters raided his town. There were troops on the streets. And I was a mainline Republican then, and I said, you're a kook, you're a nut. No such thing as that exists, because the media had said kooks talk about black helicopters. And then in 96, 97, 98, they did urban warfare in Texas. Police chiefs threw them out. They tried to pay off the San Antonio police chief. I interviewed the head of Kingsville Emergency Management. Then I said, no, they're real. It's an urban warfare drills to prepare the public and local governments for martial law. Now that's mainstream news in the Army Times, and I had Ron Paul on this week saying, yes, they were threatened with martial law on the floor of the House. Other congressmen were, and he thinks martial law is a real threat, and it's on C-SPAN, and Glenn Beck covered it last week and said they're getting ready for martial law. The point is, though, it worked on me for a while. They said, kooks talk about black helicopters. And I'm like a mainline Republican host when I first got on. I mean, I was anti-Federal Reserve, kind of a Ron Paul type, but, still a lot more, quote, mainline. Well, I was ignorant. So, see, before they turned the urban warfare loose on us, they said, kooks talk about this, it doesn't exist. Before they turn a new world order loose and a global banking system, they say, kooks talk about a world currency, it doesn't exist. Kooks talk about a North American Union. Then they set it up, and the public won't talk about it because they heard kooks talk about it. I mean, you understand the psychological warfare that's being used against you? All right, I promise, straight to your phone calls when we get back on the other side of this quick break as world government takes over. Stay with us.